I'd like to welcome you to the Medical Marijuana and Wellness webinar series. Tonight's topic is going to be NORML, a very important organization helping to legalize cannabis here in the United States. Person helping me tonight is a gentleman named Chris Cano, who I've known for a long time and does a great job. And Chris, I want you to not only tell me about NORML, but about yourself. I think not only are you influential here in Florida, but you now are on the board for the national board, right?
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be a part of this educational series with you. And I know we've had a great time collaborating on this series and other webinars to educate folks in the public about the benefits of cannabis therapy and how it can help them change their lives. And, you know, we wouldn't be where we are today with such great access if it wasn't for organizations like NORML. NORML stands for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And so NORML has been around since 1970. A little bit of history. It started out with a small grant from Hugh Hefner. You know, it was started by a bunch of really young lawyers who, you know, saw where prohibition was going, you know, during the 70s and really how the war on drugs was escalating and how harmful it was with the prohibitionist policies of the United States government in destroying American families and the lives of everyday hardworking citizens. And, you know, since then, cannabis, although it still remains a Schedule I drug federally, there are now finally conversations and actual legislation being pushed through both the United States Senate and House of Representatives. And NORML has been there every step of the way since then, continuing to push public opinion forward and continuing to work at every level of government. Myself in 2014 experienced, you know, what it was like with my father being diagnosed with a terminal form of dementia and not having legal access to cannabis, having to turn to the legacy market for access and medicine, and being pulled over one night right after I just got his medicine for him and was on my way home to give it to him. And so you can imagine, you know, how difficult it is to be slapped with felony charges, to have your life uprooted and sitting there in a jail cell, you know, making you rethink your decisions. But in the grand scheme of things, rather than feeling sad about it or disappointed, I figured that that shouldn't happen to anyone. That if you have a loved one who is sick, that they should have safe and reliable access to cannabis. And so that motivated me to found the Suncoast Chapter of NORML, which operates out of Tampa Bay in the state of Florida, and even become a regional organizer on the medical marijuana campaign in 2016 to push it over the top and legalize it. Our chapter of NORML is one of the largest and most active in the Sunshine State, and we continue to work at every level of government with local counties and cities to adopt decriminalization ordinances to help the state of Florida's legislature pay attention to what the shortcomings are in the existing medical marijuana system and improve outcomes for patients. That includes writing legislation to protect, you know, people's parental rights, their employment rights, even their right to get an organ transplant. And these are some of the key initiatives that we continue to push for in the Florida legislature, in addition to working at the federal level, going to Congress annually and motivating our members to engage their members of Congress to get prohibition finally put to bed. And let's end, you know, these 80 years of prohibition for cannabis in this country and return to a time where people could get access to this life-saving medicine.
I mean, Chris, you know, look, I look at cannabis. When I got involved in cannabis almost 10 years ago, it was a shock to me because I wasn't into cannabis at all. I got into it to kind of help a friend, and then I found out that it's safe. No one's ever died from it, which is very different from what we find with the opioid epidemic. You know, if you have trying to fight pain, this is clearly one of the better alternatives. Then I found out that, you know, your and my tax money has been paying for research into medical cannabis since 1964 with Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. I mean, we didn't know this, and yet your money and my money have been paying. It still is paying for it, by the way, to Ben Gurion University and the University of Jerusalem, and yet we're not taking advantage of that research, which I found amazing. Yet you find countries, not only Israel, but you find countries like Canada that have completely embraced it for a number of reasons and really have benefited from it. I think that the time for prohibition to end is there. I know we have, it's almost like this big granite rock that's in Washington, D.C., not to mention even here in Florida, I don't want to minimize the issues that are here, but you in your organization have done a great job to keep beating on that rock, and we're beginning to see some cracks in it. But I think it's something that really needs to be done, because we need safe alternatives for things like pain management, anxiety, stress, PTS. And this is about a safe. We know it helps with cancer, and yet we're not doing as much cancer research that we should be doing. And this is where I think NORML has done a really great job of being able to move things forward and try to break it down. And I want to thank you for that. Let me put it to you that way. But I think that's you're bringing some very positive messages to a lot of people that really want to see that a market that I think can really provide a safe alternative.
Well, we have tons of educational resources that are available through, and tons of research studies on National NORML's website, normal.org, and also on our website, suncoastnormal.org. And so if folks need more educational resources and also want to get involved into the advocacy side of things, we're happy to have them, and we'd love to have them join us as a member. Because, as a membership organization, we're only as strong as the people who continue to help us push. And I think that is always been the strength of NORML, is the fact that we are a grassroots organization. There are NORML chapters all across the country. In many states, there are many regional chapters and statewide chapters that are really pushing where there is no other voice. In states that are still prohibitionist holdouts, like the Carolinas,
Right.
Georgia, even out in the Midwest in certain states. And so as we see prohibition fall in more and more states, you can point and see who was actually rolling up their sleeves, putting in the work, and somewhere along the line you will run into a NORML organizer somewhere.
Yeah, and you guys, look, it is a marathon, not a sprint. And you guys have had some tough roads to hoe, some very difficult people to deal with, but you guys have done a great job. And I do think it's something that we need to take a look at. I think, had Nixon made the right decision, he made it the Schedule I drug, saying it has no medicinal value at all, which we know today is not true. Yeah. Had he made the right decision, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people's lives would have been altered positively, and what we need to do is we need to turn all that around.
Well, the Nixon administration had political motivations. It's been said by his own domestic policy advisor. They knew what they were doing by making cannabis Schedule I. They knew that the main users of cannabis were, their political adversaries, if you will, anti-war left hippies who were protesting in Vietnam, and folks in the African American and Latino communities who were advocating in the civil rights movement. And so they knew that they could, associate drugs with hippies and with African Americans and Latinos, then they could win a public opinion war on television and at the ballot box, and they were quite effective at doing that. But now in the modern era with the internet, if you will, things have changed a lot, because people now do have access to reliable information. They can see even Nixon's own Blue Ribbon Commission, which was headed by Governor Ed Schaefer, came back and shown that cannabis didn't have any of the deleterious effects that Nixon wanted them to say that it had. And so that's why a lot of that research was even scrapped and put away. And I'm glad that through the internet, you can go into the Schaefer Drug Library and read the commission's findings. You can even go back even further back to the 1940s and read the LaGuardia report with Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia of New York, showing that, again, cannabis is the most widely used substance, if you will. It's one of the cheapest. And that is something that we need to take into account as the industry advances too, because one of the main things that's holding folks up right now in getting access to it is the cost prohibitiveness of folks who are sick, who are in the working class, seniors who live paycheck to paycheck, veterans who are on fixed incomes, being able to get legal access to cannabis. And oftentimes what we find is the legal markets are either pricing people out because of overhead costs or because of taxes that are being levied by the government. And so that's why I believe NORML still has a place in a post-legalization, a post-prohibition world, because we are now transitioning into being the consumer advocate lobby. We've always been an advocate for cannabis consumers when it was illegal, but now that it is legal, we want to make sure that people have access to high quality cannabis at affordable prices.
Well, making it, let's just say we're not done with the legal battle. You still got to finish that one off. But I think once you finish that one, I think the next battle is to make sure that the insurance companies are being able to cover cannabis just like they cover any other, like they cover drugs. Cannabis is not a drug. It's a plant that acts as a medicine. But it being a medicine, it should be covered by your medical plans. And today it's not, and it should be.
It is interesting that you say that because many court cases and case precedents in certain medical marijuana states through workman's comp insurance have, through court cases, been declared that they're required to pay for people's medical cannabis. And so as we see those as case precedents, hopefully lawmakers will get on board and realize that the American, health insurance industry and the American, medical industry do have shortcomings. Oftentimes we see the overregulation of cannabis, like in states like Florida, where they create these vertically integrated systems that do not create a wide benefit to the patients. And then we see in other states where, they're creating social equity licenses and allowing people who are small mom and pop businesses to be able to get into the cannabis industry. But all in all, this industry exists for the purpose of serving sick people, and sick people should be able to have safe, quality access to life-saving medicine. And in this country, the fact that insurance doesn't pay for it, to me, is a high crime. And so that is definitely the next step in the legal process of, once we end prohibition, how do we get this to be, a recognized therapy, no different than chiropractor or massage or any of the other therapies that insurance at one time didn't pay for, but now people are realizing that they are medically necessary.
Sure. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of, as we wrap this thing up, I want to actually talk about what people can get from NORML. I know, first of all, when I got involved in cannabis, you have an extensive library. Going to norml.com, and even you mentioned Central Coast NORML, there is a lot of articles, a lot of material out there that you can go to that I think is very helpful. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely. We have, amazing staff at the national level, and even with our local chapter, who, consistently are on the cutting edge of compiling research, writing op-eds, and advancing, legislation. And so if people want to learn more about cannabis from either a public policy point of view or from a therapeutic point of view, there are resources, as I said, on norml.org, and even going to our local chapter at Suncoast NORML, where they can access those free of charge.
Yeah, I know one of the first documents I saw was, I think, from the gentleman, I'm going to probably destroy his last name, Paul Armandello. He had a document that was 77 pages long that had the human body and showed all the studies that were done that cannabis contributed to. And it was 77 pages of studies, medical research studies that were done that shows cannabis is effective. Now, to be blunt, those studies weren't done in the United States, but he compiled all of those and put them together. And I thought, boy, that was a powerful statement. And that was, again, NORML put that together, and Paul put that together. I want to thank him. I hope to meet him someday. I just found that was really remarkable.
Paul has served as our deputy director for National NORML for a few decades now, and he is definitely a resource. Consistently writing op-eds in national publications. Every week, he always has some new research coming out of somewhere that he's always sharing with the various chapters. And so I really appreciate all the hard work that he continues to do. And now that I'm on the National Board of NORML, I'm honored to serve with folks who are on that board who have been there from the beginning. And knowing that, letting them know that the next generation is safe in our hands. And I'm very proud to serve alongside, our former Commissioner of Agriculture, Nikki Freed, who is also a new addition to the board. So we have two national board members of NORML from Florida. And I also just want to take the time, for those who may not know, former National Board member Norm Kent just recently passed away. And he was instrumental for many years in continue to educate and advocate out of South Florida. And so, just knowing that the next generation is picking up the slack and doing what we need to do to keep pushing this over the line. And that's also something that, in a lot of ways is bittersweet, because we've been at this for so long. And it's like the people who started this are starting to cross the rainbow bridge, if you will. Sure. And that's sad that we've had generations of people come and go, and we're still dealing with this. And so that's why I would encourage folks to become a member of their local NORML chapter. If you don't have one near you, do like I did and start one. reach out to National NORML and say, hey, I'm in this area. We don't have any NORML chapters, and get 10 friends together and just make it happen. And we've started in 2014, and now we've grown to the largest and most active in the state of Florida. Every week we produce a cannabis entertainment and news show called The Rotation, which folks can watch live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and download the past episodes to catch up. But we consistently try to bring folks the latest news and what's happening in cannabis, and even share those studies that we were talking about earlier that are coming out of other countries. There are such amazing medical studies that are coming out of other countries, whether it's how cannabis affects the development of children in utero out of Jamaica, or how it helps with the treatment of intractable brain cancers coming out of Spain, or all the amazing research that they've done in both Canada and in Israel. And Dr. Meshulam, 92 years old, who recently just passed away just in the past month. He has definitely been a luminary and on the cutting edge of this, from isolating and discovering THC and CBD to learning the fact that we have an endogenous cannabinoid system that is in our bodies that we didn't even know about until the 1990s. And so there are so many great researchers that contribute to the body of work that is cannabis therapy. And so, Marc, I just want to thank you for being one of those folks who are bringing that to the public through these webinars.
Well, thank you. And I think, again, NORML has done a great job of putting the research in front of people. You hear all the time, we need to do more research. And candidly, we've done a lot of research. And we, first of all, have to recognize that. This has been more research than almost any pharma drug out there. I think, and I find that amazing. When you go to PubMed, there's more research than on cannabis than on any other drug that's out there. And again, cannabis is not a drug. It's a plant that acts as a medicine. But when you put it up against the pharma industry, this research is paled. Now, what I find interesting is it's all come from outside the United States. And again, we need in the United States to get in the game. And I think that's what NORML is helping us do. And I think I would encourage anyone who's watching this to become a NORML member minimally, because what you're going to get is the newsletters and the information on a regular basis that's going to help you understand cannabis, how it can help you, how it can help your friends, and socially what it can do to make our society a little bit better. I think the other side of it too is, if you're so inclined, become an activist. I did. I would have never thought, if you'd have told me 20 years ago I'd have become a medical marijuana activist, I'd have told you you're crazy. But once I found out what was going on, it was very hard to sit on a couch, watch my neighbors go through what they're going through, and not do something to help them. And
absolutely. For many of us, that is the spark that it is. You see the suffering of loved ones and people that you care about. You hear the medical professionals tell them that there's no options for them or there's no treatment. And then when you actually start using the internet and doing your own research, you realize that, there are options and there are treatments. It's just that it's medical cannabis. And in certain places, it's not available. For certain conditions, there may not be enough valid medical research coming out of the United States. But there is amazing research coming out of other countries that are much more forward thinking on this issue than we are. And, a lot of it boils down to money in politics and the influence of money and big money in our medical system in this country. If you think about large pharmaceutical companies and the amount of money they get for drug research from the United States Congress, and then you can tell someone that, hey, out of those 19 medications you're taking, you could probably ditch 17 of them for cannabis. That is hurting the bottom line of multi-billion-dollar interest. And so,
but it may hurt their bottom line. But let me tell you what it does. It helps the top line of the patients.
Yes.
And that's what's really important. I think that when it comes right down to it, if our medical care is really here for the patients, or are we here for the pharma industry? And I'm not trying to, I'm just drawing lines. I'm just saying it's just fascinating to me. I mean, my goal when I got involved, let's say a couple of years ago, I set a goal of helping one person every day get their life back. And so far we've accomplished that. And I think being able to just help other people and to see the benefits that have come, people who have had no alternative. And so they decided, well, as a last ditch effort, I'll take a look at cannabis. It shouldn't have been the last ditch effort, but it should have been the first thing they tried. But let's put it this way, once they try it, they realize it works and they go tell their friends. Please, if I can do anything and recommend anything, if you're watching this, join a NORML. We're going to put it, we'll edit these, we'll put some information on how to find you. Join NORML. get the information, get the weekly newsletters, and then more importantly, stay tuned, because all this can do is help you get better and lead a better life.
Indeed, indeed. That's what it's all about, quality of life, and the fact that there is a plant that is put on this earth for one reason or another, whether you believe in a almighty power or you believe in the power of evolution, however it might be. But the fact is that there is a symbiosis between the cannabis plant and the therapeutic properties that it produces and the human nervous system. And the fact is that we've even seen it help out our pets. And not just for us, but my mom's own little Dotson had a seizure, and I remember after my dad had passed away, we still had some of his medicine in the closet, and just a few drops of cannabis oil stopped that seizure in its tracks, and the dog hasn't had any since. And given on a regular regimen of pet CBD and such. So for folks realizing out there, if you are a creature with a spine, there is some way in which medical cannabis can be therapeutic for you.
Sure.
As I said before, and the research has proven, we have our own endogenous cannabinoid system that naturally produces chemicals in our body that regulate everything from our appetite to our pain to our sleep that are identical to the chemicals that are produced in the cannabis plant. And that is why it helps with such a wide variety of symptoms. And so for some folks, they think, oh, it's a wonder drug. And it's not a panacea. It just so happens that it works so amazingly in replacing and in supplementing a lot of the chemicals that we may be deficient in our own human body that we need to live a healthy life.
Well, Chris, I know we need to wrap this up from a time standpoint, because your time is valuable. I know that I'm just going to give one last story. When I do my seminars, I did a seminar in my hometown, Claremont, and this lady was in the front row. She was literally crippled and brought in a wheelchair by her son. And she was interested in medical cannabis, and we actually got her a card. She got medical cannabis. A year later, when we did the seminar again, this lady walks up dressed to the nines, and she says, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No, I really don't, ma'am. I'm sorry." And she said, "I know, because I was that one that was in the wheelchair that couldn't walk, and I was told that I had 3 months to live. I went and got medical cannabis. 2 months after I got it, I got out of my wheelchair. I then got out of my walk. I then started with a walker. And by the way, 2 days ago, I got out of my walker, and I wanted to walk in here and thank you. And it was all cannabis. And this is what it goes back to, getting people their lives back. And I think there's a lot of those stories that are out there. And Chris, I want to thank you and your organization for what you've done to really, I think, get people's lives back. And I think we need to just do more of it. And we need to have our politicians understand that's what this does.
Politicians only listen to the power of the people. And so that's why we need numbers, and that's why we need more folks to become members. And so for everybody listening, please go to suncoastnormal.org, sign up to become a member, or check out normal.org and find your local chapter where you can get involved today.
Chris, thank you very much. And I'm sure you and I will be talking obviously more in the future, but thank you very much.